On this episode, we get into the Move tool. Now, by the time you get done watching this video, you're going to know how to successfully move an object in SketchUp. Some common pitfalls that a lot of SketchUp users have when moving objects. We're going to also get into how to make copies with the Move tool, and obviously at the end we're going to talk about arrays. Now this might be a little bit of a longer video because the Move tool, as simple as it might seem, has a lot going on, has a lot of different other tools built into this one single tool. So feel free to rewatch this video and practice this pretty hardcore, okay? I would say probably the Move tool, outside of the Push-Pull tool, is one of the most commonly used tools in SketchUp, especially when we're getting into some of our advanced work. So let's go ahead and get started. So my Move tool is going to be right down here above the tape measure tool, and it kind of looks like a compass rose. Okay, north, south, east, west. Now the Move tool does have an auto select feature, meaning that I would not have to select things beforehand in order to come in and move things. So for instance, this particular edge on this, I could click once and I could move it around, okay, like so. I could click on an endpoint of a line segment and I could move that around as well. I could move around surfaces such as this, okay, and get it into different places. I could also select different objects that have been grouped together, and I could move those around as well. So that's all nice and handy, but predominantly the best way to use the Move tool is to pre-select what you want to move, because we can move more than just one object at a time. So if I wanted to, I could select these two edges here, or maybe even this third one, and because the auto select tool remembers all the pre-selections, or it prefers that, now I can move that. Okay, probably not a great example, but this is nice when trying to move multiple things at a time. So for instance, let's double select that. I wonder if I'm going to be able to get this to move. So one of the main first pitfalls of using the Move object is it doesn't always like to listen to you in regards to, hey, I want this to come out or off. Make sure that you're using the inference lines, right? Blue, green, and then red. Now this one is obviously not going in the red, but that's going to help you a ton later on. Don't just kind of willy-nilly this thing to get it to where you want it to go. Sometimes you might have to take several clicks and move it in that blue, green, and red axis to get to the point. Okay, so let's get into something a little bit more sophisticated here. Now this is obviously a much more detailed model, and we're going to move this refrigerator around in this kitchen. So if I'm going to end up moving an object, again, best practice for using this tool is to usually pre-select it, and then when you're selecting it, move it by an endpoint, because remember, with the Move tool, you click once to essentially pick up the object. You'll move it to where you need to go, and then you click a second time to put the object down. And because we're navigating in 3D space, we have to remember that when we are clicking, we are in fact selecting a particular spot to pick it up by in 3D space. We'll move it, and then when we click a second time, we're clicking a distinct spot in 3D space, and then to set things down. So it's always best if you can pick things up by corners or edges and move it to other geometry on your model. So for instance, if I want it to be completely against this back piece, I would pick it up by this back corner, and then I could very easily line it up on edge because I'm using my inference markings, and I know it's on edge because it turns as a red square, and I can put it that way. Or worst case scenario, what I could do is zoom in here, click it by this back corner, and actually inference lock it to this here as well. Right, it's preferring that. Okay, now let me show you probably the most frustrating thing about the move tool, and this is what a lot of people get wrong when they're moving things around. They just kind of willy-nilly grab it. So I say, okay, I'm going to grab this refrigerator right here. Again, this is where they selected it. It's kind of an arbitrary place on the surface, and then when they go to put it somewhere, it's going to want to snap to certain spots, and they're like, well, why in the world is my refrigerator like in the cabinet like that? I don't want it. So then they click over here and they're trying to move things, right? And it's just not lining up for them. Again, use the inference access lines and endpoints. They're your friends. They're there to help you make sure that you are moving things properly in 3D space. Okay, so again, instead of having things like sunken down below, we can obviously, raise that up. And again, this might take several clicks, but here I can raise it up in the blue axis. I can grab my back corner, and if I need to, I can orbit around, and I can ensure that I'm on that back corner there as well. And then if I need to move it in a second time, I can go in the green axis and I can move it over slightly. Okay, so that is probably the most important thing you can practice when using the move tool. Okay, all right, finally let's get into some copies and arrays. So here I have a column. I'll move this like so, and I spent a lot of time making this column, and I have to make several of these columns. So I don't want to spend 15 minutes remaking this because it probably isn't going to be exactly the same, and it's just obviously quicker to essentially copy and paste, even though we don't really have a copy and paste function in SketchUp. So as you can see, this is already made into a group for me. I can grab my move tool. I'm going to select it on a similar spot here, end point or corner, and I'm starting to move this object. The keyboard shortcut for making a copy is Control. So if I hit Control, you can see now that I have my original, and now I'm able to make a copy and move that away in my modeling. Okay, and I don't necessarily have to grab on to the object itself. Remember, we're picking things up by selecting a 3D or a spot in 3D. So in reality, I could theoretically click right here, and that's where I picked it up, and then I could end up selecting it there and putting it down. So don't feel like it's absolutely necessary to always select it by the object itself. Perhaps maybe you have another part of your model that you're going to use to reference where you're going to end up moving it to. All right, anyways, so getting back into moving things, or moving a copy, select the model. As I'm moving it, I hit Control. Okay, I don't hold down Control, I just click it, and then I can move it. Now in this case, I'm going to move it out a particular measurement, and we can be accurate with this. So just like any other of the tools that we've learned, I click once to pick it up, and before I set it down with a second click, I am now going to enter in my measurement. So in this case, let's just go 4 feet. Then I hit Enter, and SketchUp obviously places it down 4 feet away from the measurement from where I picked it up from in relationship in the direction, and then put it down automatically at that distance. So that's how we can be accurate when moving. What if I want to have several copies go out that same distance instead of picking it up, typing it in, hitting enter, picking it up, moving it, and hitting enter? We are then going to, or SketchUp has the ability to create what's called an array. I didn't say that right. So as I set my object down or I hit the enter key, this is the window of opportunity that will allow me to be able to make an array. Okay, and there's two different kinds of arrays. First, I want to show you what's called an external array, meaning that I make my copy and then it's going to make those copies outward from that particular object. So in this case, I want, let's say, 5 copies being made that are 4 feet apart. So I type in 5 and then I type in X without a space in between, and I'm telling SketchUp, hey, I would like 5 total copies that are evenly spaced apart based off of my measured amount that I set down my first copy. Then I hit enter, and now I have 5 copies, all 4 feet apart, all in the green axis direction. If I decide that that's too much, I can always go back in and edit that by just hitting a different number and hitting X at the end, and it can change that. What if I wanted 15X? Or maybe I only wanted 2X. So you can play around with that, but SketchUp obviously uses those calculations in order to make an external array. Alright, the last piece, or the second way that we can make an array, is what's called an internal array. What that means is I can come in here and I can move a copy, again hitting Control, and this is my starting point, and I'm going to then move a copy out to my end point. So let's say I want it to be 30 feet away from this one. Now I want to populate copies of my object in between these two, not externally going outwards, but in between. That's what we have an internal array for. So just like an external array, I would type in how many spaces I want in between my copies, and then I would hit the forward slash on my keyboard, which by the way is the same button as your question mark. So in this case I hit 5 forward slash to make sure that I'm distinguishing that between an external array. This is going to be internal. I hit enter, and now SketchUp calculates the distance between the first one and the last one, okay, or the first one and where I put the endpoint, and it evenly distributes that out 5 times. Okay, what if I want it to be 8 slash, okay, or 10 forward slash? I can come in here and adjust that all day long. However, as soon as I click on a different tool over here and I'm doing some other stuff, it will no longer allow me to make those arrays. So please make sure that you are making that array external or internal immediately after setting down your moved copy of that object. Alright, that was a lot to take in, but let's just kind of review real quick. We got the move tool, and we went over its auto select features and how to take select an edge, an endpoint, a surface, or an object, and that's kind of how you can move things around. We also wanted to make sure that you knew that pre-selecting an object or an entity in your object is the preferred way of moving things, because now you are indicating specifically what you want to be moved. We then showed you some pitfalls about moving things and how to alleviate that, or what the best practices are in relationship to moving objects in 3D space. We showed you guys how to make copies, and then how we can, from making copies, make an external and internal array. So again, lots of stuff in this video. Feel free to go back and watch this, and again, get into SketchUp, just make some simple objects and practice this, so that way you get the hang of it before moving on to our next series of videos. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.